really it's on Lucy Charles-Barclay to go and do the work and make sure she has the lead required?
Well, I think they're sort of in the same boat, right? I mean, both these athletes would like to see a gap over the simply phenomenal runners that we've got in the field with Anne Haug and obviously Ashley Gentle could probably put a few more in that kind of category. But, I mean, that is definitely the strategy Lucy Charles has at every single race. And that's probably one of her weaknesses, that she only has that as her joker card, right? She can't really play a safe card and surprise these athletes by playing it out and just waiting to see what the others are doing. She always goes out and she has no fear in her heart. I'm pretty certain of that.
And so speaking to a lot of the athletes after their time at swim prep yesterday in the afternoon, they noted that there was quite a strong current in the river. So on the way out, which we've just seen them get to the turnaround buoy, it's quite a strong head current, so it's slower on the way out, and then on the way down, which is the long straight section that they're on now, it's actually a bit of a current behind you, so they do swim quite a lot faster. Do you know if that suits the stronger or weaker swimmers, Jana? Do the stronger swimmers prefer to have the current behind them or in front of them?
So in general, I would say the trickier the conditions are, the better it is for the good swimmers, because they have a stroke and they can maintain that stroke despite any outside influence, right? So if there's a strong current, if there's a bit of chop, today we can see there's not much wind, but they might be swimming with a tail current, but they're swimming into an ever so slight headwind. So every little wave makes a difference so that these athletes can get the full length of their stroke. We see Lucy who really reaches out long under the water and makes sure she gets the full length of her stroke, and that's the sign of a strong swimmer, whereas a weaker swimmer could be distracted by conditions, getting it into her head that they're moving slow. The great advantage is that on both sides you've got buildings, you've got landmarks that you can reference off, and that you don't have to do as much sighting as you would in a normal kind of open water swim. And that also helps the good athletes, the good swimmers, to really focus on speed only.
And we've seen Sophie Caldwell get nicely onto Lucy Charles-Barclay's feet here. I'm joined by Vicky Holland in commentary, who's spent a lot of time racing alongside Sophie Caldwell in their short course pursuit of the Olympic dream. And Vicky, Sophie didn't get selected for the Olympics, so we find her here at T100 London. Do you think she has a point to prove?
Yes, but I also think that for her the most important thing right now is to enjoy what she's doing, and she said that herself. It might be a little bit cliche to say that, but she's come off a very, very tough selection process that she found herself on the wrong side of, and British Triathlon were in a, some may say, enviable position of having multiple athletes that they could have chosen into that Olympic team who were all medal contenders, and Sophie is now the only female athlete to have won a World Series short course race this Olympic cycle to not be on the start line in Paris. So you can look at that and say she's incredibly unlucky with the way the selections have fallen for her, and it's sort of left her in this position of, well, what on earth do I do now? All her eggs had been in one basket. She'd been preparing for that race for years, and unfortunately the selection didn't go in her way. So now here she is at the T100, and I think she's just gonna enjoy the process and put herself out there, race the race that's in front of her, as she said to us earlier today, and I think she's just going to try and enjoy something new today.
And Jan, it does look like Lucy Charles-Barclay has created some huge gaps here. We can see that athlete who was in third. I'm assuming it's probably Hayley Chura. It looks like Lisa Norden, but I think it's probably Hayley Chura. And then a big gap to a chasing group that hasn't really broken up at all. How do you see these early gaps and the early part of the swim playing out?
That's amazing. We've just had a statistic that the last athlete was already 45 seconds at the first buoy behind. And I mean, that was maybe 250 meters or something like that. So the pace is definitely on. That's only going to extrapolate throughout the rest of the swim. And I really see the girls, setting that intent early and then hopefully being able to continue. You know, Sophie is absolutely new to this distance, and I believe she's only had her first aero bike set up within less than a month of preparing. But I think Vicky described it really, really well. What happens when you go through that kind of adversity and when you go through that kind of a school of hard knocks, as you will. I do believe Team GB, especially on the female side, is probably the toughest in the world to make. You've got years and years of hard training and hard racing within your body. And, you know, it's exciting. She's a youngster and coming up to really show the experienced T100 athletes where potentially, you know, she could disrupt the standings.
Well, she has nothing to lose. You know, this isn't her distance. As you correctly said, Jan, she's only been on a time trial bike for a matter of a few weeks. And while she is known as being a strong cyclist in short course racing, we all know that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get onto a time trial bike and immediately be one of the world's best cyclists in middle and long distance triathlon as well. So she is coming in with very tapered, metered expectations. She's not coming here thinking I'm going to blow everyone out of the water because I'm a fast short course athlete. She's just going to have a go.
Lucy Charles-Barclay, a hot start here. She's gapped every one of the big favourites, and we're going to hear from her right now.
Yeah, I guess the T100 season so far, we had, well, myself, I had a solid start in Miami. I was super happy with second. I'd raced in Singapore last year and not had the race really that I wanted, so I went there really wanting to do better and came away with second. So it was, I think I was fifth the year before, so it felt like a big improvement, but I still am hungry to get that win. Decided to sit out the San Francisco race to kind of conserve my energy, get myself ready for the home race in London. And I think for me, outside of the grand final, that's like my next biggest goal. So yeah, just all the work is going into that one. There's a lot of athletes that want to make it hard for me in the London T100. I mean, I feel like, yes, there's a lot of Brits doing it, but I live the closest to the race, so it feels really like my home race. And if anyone can take the opportunity away from me winning, they're going to try their hardest.
We can hear in Lucy's voice there, Jan, just how important this home race is, I believe. And she has established a big group to that, a big gap to that chasing group behind. You can see here on the camera there clearly, almost probably 45 seconds to a minute back, and led by Imogen Simmons and India Lee.
And let's not forget, Imogen Simmons came out the water in San Francisco, riding the current, reading it better than anyone else, just speaking of the current earlier. But we're not too far away from the Aussie exit, and I think we'll get a good view and some exact splits just then.
Well, that's Ash Gentle there leading with Imogen Simmons and India Lee behind. You can also see that Kat Matthews is in there, so Chelsea Sodaro there as well. So that is a group of pretty much all the other big hitters. Alan Haag is in there as well. She's, if you look at that chase group, if you look at Ash Gentle in the orange cap in front, not the purple cap right behind her, who is India Lee, the next one about 5 athletes back, that is Alan Haag. I mean, for the pace that Lucy Charles-Barclay is sitting, that's not a huge gap there for Annie Haag, and Ash Gentle being the one to lead that chase group in front of Imogen Simmons and India Lee is pretty impressive.
It is, but let's remember this kind of camera perspective also doesn't give you the full view, and we're only halfway through this one. You know, the gap is still about to happen. But you know, Lucy Charles-Barclay has definitely stated her intent. She's got a special bike, I think, with the London subway painted on it. She's got T-shirts made. This race means a lot to her, and there's not going to be any missing effort.
This Aussie exit, as opposed to others, you don't quite get the view of other athletes. When you get onto the pontoon, you can get a quick look right, like you just saw Sophie Coldwell took a good look. You don't really get to tell who's where and how far ahead of you are. It's quite difficult, but they definitely still would have seen that they had a decent gap there.
Well done, Haley. Yes, our third athlete was Hayley Chura, as we speculated, and I just noticed on the dive in there that Sophie and Lucy, I think they swapped positions. I think Lucy looked over a little bit at Sophie and sort of said, hey, come on, you take the lead for a bit now. And I think when we just saw them a minute ago, it was Sophie who was starting the second lap in the lead.
Well, you know, Vicky, I think also there's a thing here. This kind of Aussie exit is very much suited to Olympic distance athletes. You are more used to going the high pace, the high intensity, and everybody's walking out a little carefully here. You know, Lucy was adjusting her goggles, whereas Sophie, she's used to this, you know, changing pace. As we see Anne Haug making her way out of the water, and she'll definitely be looking to minimize the gap.
Yeah, this really is one big pack, really. We've got the two leaders in Sophie and Lucy, of course, and we've got Hayley Chura as a solo athlete, and then all the rest of these girls are kind of in one long line. They're all really, there's nothing much to split the rest of the field at this point.
Some interesting things I saw there, there was a tiny little gap in front of Kat Matthews. So you see Kat Matthews there in the yellow cap. She did let that gap of 5 metres just start to appear, but you can see she's quickly trying to close it to sort of Chelsea Sadara in front and Annie Haug there at the back of the group. But the Ash Gentle-led group with Imogen Simmons and India Lee do look like they're trying to push on and put a bit of a split into this group. So you can see Ash Gentle here leading this chase group with Imogen Simmons on her tail and India Lee behind her. There's a tiny little split. The feet just aren't quite there. And I mean, on this second lap, if that gap doesn't get closed quickly, you will see it start to just expand very quickly, which we kind of are seeing in front of our eyes happen right now. And this is a dangerous group of 3. And I mean, I don't know how many people would have expected Ash Gentle to be the one pushing the pace with Imogen Simmons and India Lee, like maybe on their feet, but not the one driving the pace. This is, I mean, I guess it shows the intent from Ash Gentle coming off a bad result in San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, Ash has often not had the greatest swim performances, I think she would probably say herself, but she's not a bad swimmer. I think she really struggles in the races where there are a lot of athletes and you're sort of in the melee a little bit, getting beaten up, as some